Hello and welcome back to the 46 of 46 podcast. It's a winter wonderland up here in the ADK, and I hope you all have some plans in your schedule to enjoy the snow here in the park this winter. I am back with a summit session episode this week to talk all about the high peaks. Yep, you love the high peaks, so we're going to stay in the high peaks this episode, but it's going to be all about winter. However, we are trading the hiking boots and the trekking poles for skis and ski poles. My guests this week are brothers Jamie and Doug, who recently completed the two impressive feats revolving the 46 high peaks. One, they completed their winter 46 on skis. Yes, they became the second and third people ever to finish the ski 46, where they skied all 46 Adirondack High Peaks top to bottom. The first person and only person before them was the man, the myth, the legend, Ron Konowitz. Many of you probably follow him on social media or you've talked to him on a hiking Facebook group. But the other impressive feat that they've recently accomplished is they also made a documentary film about the journey. The film is called Variable, and they're with me today to talk all about this 10-year-long adventure in the making. Jamie and Doug Kennard, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Great to have you guys here. This is going to be fun to talk to you about, to dive in on this subject of skiing the high peaks and, get into the details of that. Now, I know you both are the first people to ever ski the Catskills 35 too, so congratulations to both of you for that feat. Super awesome. Before we get into the journey through the high peaks and then your film and everything, let's start with a little background on both of you guys. Give us a little background on where'd you grow up? How'd you get into the outdoors? And then which eventually led to skiing, backcountry skiing. But give us a little background on you. We'll start with you, Jamie.
Sure. Well, Doug and I grew up in Western New York, just outside of Rochester. And we both grew up skiing at Bristol Mountain. We did some ski racing there during high school. I went off to Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, so sort of southern Adirondacks, and worked my way down to Massachusetts and then down to New York City for a number of years. And in the mid-2000s, I worked my way back up into the Catskills and settled down in Woodstock, New York, which is where I currently live now.
Makes sense. So were you there when you skied the 35? Is that how that came about?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I was sort of new to the area. I had started hiking the 35s. And as I was hiking them, started looking around at some of those trails in the woods, thinking about sort of daydreaming if what I was seeing was skiable. And so that was sort of the early percolation of thinking about the skiing the 35s. And then around 2012, Doug and I were camping up there. And I proposed to him, or I sort of mentioned to him that I was thinking about skiing the 35s, and he countered with that he wanted to do it with me. And so that's sort of where our journey began on a camping trip up here in the Catskill Mountains.
All right, very cool. Now, who's the older brother?
I'm three years older than Doug.
All right, Doug, I was the younger brother myself, 2 years younger. So there was always that sibling rivalry with my brother. But anyways, very cool. So Doug, give us a little background on yourself.
So I grew up in Rochester as well and started ski racing in middle school and raced throughout high school and college. Raced for Northeastern and RIT. And so got done racing and kind of started just skiing at Bristol Mountain, my local ski hill here in the Finger Lakes, and kind of got bored with that, I guess. And Jamie had started hiking the Catskill 35s, and at that point, I was like, oh, that would be cool to ski him as well.
No, I was just going to interject. Doug went to Northeastern. We overlapped collegiately on our ski racing teams for 1 year, and met up in the Northeastern championships here. And, Doug being the little brother and, me being the older brother and getting to do everything first. When we met up at that, the Northeastern championships, he took advantage of that weekend of racing to kick my butt in the slalom event there. So
there you go.
Yeah. Little brothers get their day.
As the little brother, there's nothing I like to see more than that. Well done, Doug. Well done. So, okay. So you guys have a big skiing background, of course. So how did this turn into backcountry skiing? Give us a little bit about that. Because obviously ski racing and skiing on a mountain in general, very different than the backcountry world. So give us that introduction.
Yeah. I think, for me, and it probably, I think is sort of similar for Doug, but I know for me, I was getting a little bit tired and bored of skiing at the resorts around here, or really anywhere, post college, without alpine ski racing to kind of give me a ski challenge. I just wasn't quite as satisfied paying a lot of money and riding a lift, and just skiing the same runs over and over. So I think part of that sort of loss of the joy of skiing sort of fueled when I started looking around the hiking trails and thinking about if things might be skiable. I had started in college with my ski racing team. Was the first time that I had ventured up to Tuckerman Ravine in New Hampshire and skied up there. And so knowing that there were backcountry options in the Northeast was always in the back of my mind. And I think that started to overlap with how I was thinking about the Catskill Mountains and just looking for a new ski challenge. And, Doug and I we sort of excelled at slalom event and ski racing. And as most people know, slalom, you're bashing gates, you're hitting things, it's quick turns. And so for us to sort of take those skills into the backcountry here in the Northeast, where there's lots of rocks, lots of trees, our alpine racing skills kind of translated. And it sort of worked for both of us. And Doug and I being on a pretty equal ski level, it sort of meant that we were just sort of naturally good ski partners to be out there because we skied at a similar pace and had sort of similar technical skills.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were, kind of like learning the backcountry differences, like, did you guys just go out and just let it rip yourselves, or did you do a bunch of research, or did it kind of come pretty naturally? Because the backcountry is again, it's just very different than skiing on a mountain, on a ski mountain. So what was that learning curve like, or was it very short for you guys?
I think it was short, but I think we probably, and I would say this for the Catskills and the Adirondacks, I think we probably dipped into the mountains that were shorter, more approachable, more friendly, maybe had wider trails or a Jeep trail. And then as we sort of worked our way through that, each of the respective ranges, then we sort of naturally moved into some of the harder terrain or the skinnier trails or the bushwhacks. So I think that was sort of our logic and pacing for both of them.
Got it. All right, great. Now, give us a little bit of a rundown for the people, including myself. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people about this who's backcountry ski, but give us a rundown of like, what is it like to climb mountains, whether it's the Adirondack High Peaks, whether it's the Catskills, on skis? Kind of like paint that picture for the listeners.
Yeah, it's, there's lots of similarities. You're obviously going through the same kind of condition changes. What you see at the trailhead is not what you see at the top of the mountain. But with skis and backcountry skis, you've got a few more things. Obviously, you have skis on your feet instead of snowshoes. We've got ski boots that weigh more than hiking boots. And then we're dealing with skins, which are the material that we put on the bottom of our skis to give us traction on the way up. And so you're switching your ski modes on the way up, sometimes multiple times. And on top of that, and especially in the Adirondacks where there's a lot more ice, we're also using ski crampons, which attach to the bindings and function similar to boot crampons, but just another piece of equipment that we're adding to our kit and taking on and off. So the ascent, when we're going up and skiing out, one of the things that Doug and I are looking around and thinking about is when we ski back down off of the peak, where are we going to stop sort of alpine skiing, and where are we going to transition back to ski touring mode? So where are we going to stop and put our skins back on our skis and change our boot settings and change our binding settings? So we're trying to figure out that, and sometimes we calculate it right and sometimes we don't, but that's one thing that's going through our minds that hikers don't necessarily have to worry about. And then, with some of the steeper terrain, as we're moving our way up the mountain, occasionally you get to a spot where it gets really steep, or there's swaths of just blue ice that there's no way you're going to ski up, and the woods are so thick that it's not really doesn't really make sense to ski into the woods and bushwhack a way around. So there's instances where we might pull our skis off our back and we might just throw them on our shoulder or onto our packs for a little bit, throw on our boot crampons, make our way through that ice, and then transition back to our skis and keep on skiing up the mountain. So there's certainly a few points where we're spending a little bit more time transitioning and fussing around with equipment or taking things on and off, which you don't necessarily have to do with snowshoes or just hiking up a mountain.
Yeah, sure. How often would you say you are making those changes? I mean, are we talking like you might make those changes 2-3 times in the span of like 100 yards, or are we talking like a few times a hike? Like, give us a little rundown of that.
Yeah, I think, usually, we really try to minimize it. I mean, our goal with these peaks is really like skis on at the car and to try, keep them on our feet the whole way up and the whole way down, ski car to summit to car. So if we're making the transition to boot crampons and taking our skis off, which, takes a few minutes, we really just hope to do that once and really make it minimal. And, there's times that we might have had to switch, 2 or 3 times, but again, it's really minimal.
Okay.
We really just, our goal is to keep skis on our feet, and, even coming down, sometimes, there might be a log across the trail and I'm looking at it, and to crawl under with skis on is just really awkward and hurts your back, and I'll just pop my skis off and crawl over the log and put them back on. And Doug is such a stickler. He's doing anything he can to get over that log with his skis on his feet, even if it means going into the woods and finding some terrible route around that tree. So, I think we want to keep the skis on as much as we can. And, sometimes we make individual decisions about when we pop those skis off and, hike 20 yards down and pop them back on. But, I'm always looking back at Doug, and he's just diehard about it. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So now give us a little rundown on where did the Adirondacks come into play for you guys? So you grew up in Western New York, Rochester. I bet you 50% of my podcast listeners are from Buffalo or Rochester. So a lot of Western New Yorkers here. Did you guys grow up coming up to the park? Where did that kind of start to come into play for you?
For the most part, we came up to the park just to ski race in high school. We came up for the Empire State Games back in the mid 90s, early 90s for Jamie. And then it was more later on, after we had finished hiking the Catskill 35s and skiing the Catskill 35s, that we decided to start hiking and skiing the Adirondack 46ers.
Okay.
So that's how that evolved.
So again, congratulations on being the first people to do that. How did that feel? That must feel like quite the accomplishment, right?
Yeah, it felt really good. When Doug and I were skiing the Catskills, that was 2013, 2014. And, backcountry skiing was, at least here on the East Coast, was a little bit more in its infancy stage. Certainly out West, it was bigger, and over in Europe, it was big there. But in the East Coast, not much was going on, especially down here in the Catskills. There had been some folks that we knew of that had skied some of the mountains around here, but the entire 2 years that Doug and I were skiing the Catskills, we never once saw another set of ski tracks or another skier. And every group of hikers that we came across were shocked to see us. They had never seen skiers out there before. So yeah, it felt like we were pioneers in a way. And like I said, we knew that some of the peaks had been skied, but whether they had all been skied by different people at different times, it's hard to say. I certainly haven't found records of a lot of them being skied. But that's something we'll never know. But yeah, it felt great. And when we completed it, the Catskill 3500 Club, which is the hiking organization down here, they acknowledged the accomplishment and awarded Doug and I ski certificates numbers 1 and 2, which we didn't know they were going to do, but they presented it to us at the awards dinner. So that was kind of the icing on the cake.
Very cool.
Yeah, it feels good to be acknowledged for doing something like that.
As it should, and rightfully so. I mean, you did something that other people haven't done it deserves to be recognized. So again, congratulations on that. That's exciting. And you are absolutely pioneers of doing this, what you did. So I pat you on the back virtually. That's awesome. Also good on the Catskills organization for, kind of like going above and beyond and recognizing you in that way. I think that's a classy move.
It felt really special.
Very cool. Very cool. So now, Doug, talk to me a little bit about your experience during doing the Catskills 35. So this is where Jamie lives. You're kind of going to his area. And so tell me about what it was like for you to go there and start that journey.
For me, I hadn't really hiked many of the Catskill 35s, so that was kind of the challenge that I wanted to take on. When Jamie mentioned it to me, I thought it would just be a good way to become a Catskill 35er and ski them instead of hiking them. I kind of thought I could hike them without too much trouble, but I didn't know if I would be able to actually ski them. So it seemed like a good challenge at the time to take on, and it was definitely fun. We had a good winter, the winter that we did the majority of the skiing of the peaks. So we were able to ski probably, I think that in 2014, we might have skied 30 peaks in 1 year. So it was quite a bit.
And the final week that we finished, there's a huge snowstorm here. I was still living part-time in New York City, and I took a week off of work. Doug came down, and we skied about 14 peaks in 7 days, which meant skiing upwards of 3 peaks on some of those days. So we would knock off 2 that were adjacent to each other in one location, get in the car, drive over somewhere else, get there mid-afternoon, and ski a 3rd peak and come out in the dark. I was really, I had a big birthday coming up on March 10th of that year, and my goal was to have us finish by my birthday, which we did. We finished on my birthday skiing our last and final peak. So
Very nice.
It was a big week. It was exhausting doing back to back days out there, but we were so hungry, and it had just dumped so much snow. It seemed like this perfect window of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. So now you said that was like 2013, 2014 you did the Catskills?
We finished March 10th, 2014, skied the final peak.
So then if this 10-year Adirondack 46 journey, or this Adirondack 46 journey took 10 years, you must have started immediately after that.
We started the next winter. Yeah. In 2015. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, was part of the desire to come do the 46 as just like, let's just do it again, or let's just do the next thing? Or was there an element in you guys that was like, we want to be the second and third people to do the Adirondack 46?
Yeah, it was sort of, a little bit of both. I think.
Sure.
I think the thought of not having a ski challenge seemed a little, I don't know if depressing is the right word, but I think Doug and I both just needed to keep doing this. So that was part of it. During that time that we were skiing the Catskills, I started to do a little bit of internet research just to because we didn't run into anyone down here doing what we were doing. And I really wanted to find out where or if people had been doing similar things elsewhere. And so I started doing some research online. That's when I came across Ron Konowitz's name and learned that he had done the Adirondacks, which was great. And it was inspiring. But as I did more research, I didn't come across any other names. And it seemed I was scratching my head, like, why is the only name I'm coming across Ron's name up there? And I'm not hearing about anyone else skiing the Adirondacks. And the Adirondacks were the next closest mountain chain for both of us, Doug coming from Western New York. So I just started to focus my attention and thinking towards the Adirondacks. So it just seemed like a natural fit to start going up there and trying to figure out why no one else had skied them all since Ron, which was back in 1996.
Sure. Now, quick question. Did you quickly find out why people haven't done this? Was it exceedingly more difficult than the Catskills, or was it kind of like the same sort of thing, just different mountains?
Oh, we found out on the first peak, the first day out.
Which was what? What mountain?
Lower Wolfjaw,
okay.
Benny's Brook. And if anyone watches the trailer for Variable over at variablemovie.com, you'll see a couple hints there of just what we encountered on that first day. And it was probably one of, as far as conditions of something that we skied up or skied down, it's probably one of the gnarliest days. And I think if we had any sense about us, we would have done that and just said, like, this is crazy. Like, we don't, we can't do 45 more peaks like this.
Mm-hmm.
But we did it. We got, we summited and managed to ski back that day. And I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I think something just said, like, okay, that was, totally challenging and not like anything that we've experienced down here in the Catskills. I think I want more of that. So yeah, it probably should have deterred us, but for some reason we came back. I will say we didn't come back right away because the next a few weeks later, Doug tore his ACL in a ski racing accident, and so there was a sort of a big pause. And we didn't ski in the Adirondacks the next year at all as a duo. So we had some time to let it just simmer. And I think that time, maybe we forgot what we had actually experienced in that first day out, and, a little bit of short-term memory. And then once Doug was starting to feel a little bit better, we got back up there.
Those Adirondack High Peaks, they can be awfully sneaky with the way that they grab your heart, despite the misery that you sometimes feel in the moment out there. You get back to the trailhead, you're like, I guess I go again if we wanted to. And then
exactly. Yeah. It was just, I don't know. It was just, lots of people hike and go out into the mountains because they want that challenge. And certainly what we faced there on that day was a challenge. It would have been a challenge if we weren't on skis. It was, the conditions were terrible. But that's, I think, just, having this sort of ski racer background, it was just like, wow, that was terrible, but also kind of cool and fun to just, the fact that we were able to make it down on skis on a day that we shouldn't have been out there on skis.
Sure.
Yeah. It was a wake up call for sure.
I bet. So now talk to me and talk to the listeners about what are the differences, or let's say, what are the pros to skiing compared to regular winter hiking? And then what are the cons that you deal with on skis that you don't really deal with when just general winter hiking? Give us a rundown of those two.
I would say, well, the first con, as far as when you compare it to snowshoe hiking, being on skis, you're carrying up about 10 extra pounds of weight on your feet with skins, skis, bindings, and ski boots, versus snowshoes. You just have snowshoes and winter boots. So that's 10 extra pounds. So if you're going 10, 15, 20 miles, that's going to add up over time, and you're going to feel it. The benefit to being on skis is you can float over the snow better. So that's a benefit. But on the downside of that, coming down the mountain, it's much more challenging because you have longer skis and the trails are so narrow up there that it makes it really challenging and a lot slower as well. So it's about probably 20 to 30% slower than when you're hiking on snowshoes. So you're going to be spending a lot more time out in the cold and in the mountains. So you just have to be prepared for a longer days for sure.
20 to 30% slower. So listeners take note. You're probably thinking, oh, you ski the mountains, it's so much faster. So you just said 20 to 30% slower. So it is a longer process with skis.
And just to clarify, so, you don't get a lot of comments saying that's crazy. What we're talking about, we're not talking about coming down some of the wide open slides or skiing off of Mount Marcy or Wright's, Peak, which are ski friendly mountains. Certainly like those coming off on skis. Yeah. Skiing those, you can blaze past hikers and have a much faster time. But, when we're talking about Santanoni or Panther or just any of the trails that have just really, really skinny trails going up and just really thick trees where there's no clear option to ski through the woods. It's slower. You have things on your feet that are 5 or 6 feet long, and there's buried rocks and tree roots and trees, and there's hazards the entire way down. And a non-skier might look at the trail and see, walls of snow on either side and just imagine that you could just swoosh your way down that path. But you get speed so quickly. And if you don't have a clear way of making a turn or making a hockey stop, you're just going to impale yourself on something up there. And so you have to be really careful and methodical and slow on the way down. Which we are. We're not in a race to get down. We're not trying to get the fastest descent from any of these peaks back to the car. So yeah, it's not to say that you can't have fast, that skis can't be faster on some of those peaks, but I think as a whole, they are, at least for us, for Doug and I. Maybe someone out there can prove us wrong, but we definitely took our time going down.
Yeah, that's always what comes to my mind. And whenever I've asked any people who ski the high peaks or backcountry ski here in general, my question is always like, how are you keeping yourself from getting out of control or hitting a tree? Or especially the backcountry skiers who are like, there's like trails that are somewhat trails, but you're still in the trees.
You're in the trees. Yeah. You're in the trees. And so it's a lot of unglorious skiing. It's side slipping. It's a lot of, snow plow, pizza wedges. Sometimes we'll just take both of our ski poles and hold them in one hand, and we're really just grabbing on to trees and branches and anything that's sticking out to slow us down, or to give us some stability as we're navigating through something that's really thick. So yeah, it's not pretty. A lot of it is not fun skiing, but it's all challenging skiing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I had a question here written for you guys, which was like, what kind of normal, difficult things did you encounter? So it sounds like you just listed a whole bunch of stuff. We got roots, we got trees, we got slow conditions. Like these are you already just naturally hit on the normal things that you were a struggle out there. So let's flip the question around. Because we've talked a lot of like difficulty. What were like the benefits to skiing? Like what were the times that made you feel like this is an adventure? What are the positive things that you remember that would happen often? That you get to that, you have those moments, right?
Often, huh?
Or maybe even just occasionally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is totally answering your question, but there was, when we skied Grace from Route 73, it was a mountain that we had intended to do along with most of the other Dix Range. And on the day that we were out trying to tackle 4 peaks in one day, we ended up cutting Grace from our trip plan in the middle of that day because we didn't have enough time. And we weren't really looking forward to going back and just doing Grace on its own. But the day that we went out there, we just had this beautiful kind of perfect pillow powder situation. Going up the creek was almost like meadow skipping as we're ski touring up over these sort of like powder puffs of snow covering all the rocks. And so we were worried about having to navigate through the stream that day. And it was just like, I think having skis on our feet allowed us to have, like, as Doug mentioned before, we had more float on top of the snow, more buoyancy. So we were kind of able to ski up the stream. It was really pretty. And we skied one of the slides that was up there. We actually had so much fun skiing the slide that we hiked back up and did another run. And so, yeah, it was just like one of those days where we were just really dreading it, probably whether we would have been on snowshoes or skis. And something about being on skis that day just made it really, really enjoyable and ended up being, I think for Doug and I, one of our favorite peaks that we skied. And it just caught us off guard. We really weren't expecting that. And part of it had to do with the conditions that we had that day. But I think the fact that we were on skis made it that much more enjoyable and satisfying.
Beautiful. So now give me some more. Let's hit me with this. So you talked about like a good it was one of your better mountains. So what was your favorite and what was your least favorite and why? Or it could be just range, could be hike,
I mean, Grace was one of our favorites for sure. Another favorite for me was Gothics via the cable route. That has a little bit of everything. You have steeps up on the cable route area of Gothics, tree skiing in between there. Then you get to the Orbad slide, which we had a really good ski down and a good day of powder skiing on the Orbad slide. And after the Orbad slide, you go into a stream bed there. So it's a variety of skiing that you get on that route of Gothics. So that was definitely a highlight for me.
Yeah, and even after we were forced at some point to get out of the stream bed and back on a trail, but ski touring back down, and we were staying at Grace Camp, and it's just a fun ski tour back down, and then to come back to the cabin there and spend a night. Just one of those kind of magical, like, that's what you want for ski touring and ski adventuring. You want a mix of conditions, and to be able to come back and spend a night out there is really special. And I think, to add one more peak, Mount Marcy, on the day that Doug and I skied Mount Marcy was early April. It was both of our first times up there. We had the summit of Mount Marcy to ourselves, just about 0-degree winds, bluebird skies, and we took a couple of laps up there on top because the conditions were so amazing. And I knew from all of the stories and trip reports that I had read about Mount Marcy, I just knew that it can be a real bear up there, especially if the winds are high or the visibility is low. And so I think we felt really lucky to be up there under these really amazing sort of spring conditions. But it was great. And on the way down Mount Marcy, as we were coming down the trail portion, we actually crossed paths with Ron Konowitz coming up the mountain.
Wow.
He was with a forest ranger. They were cutting a tree out of the trail. He looked over at us and saw two, quote unquote, young guys coming down the trail and just commandeered us. It wasn't a question, do you guys want to help? He just shoved the saw in our hands and said, start helping and cut this tree out. And we spent a half hour cutting a tree out of the trail. And, obviously Ron knew that we were on skis, but we didn't tell him. We didn't know him personally then, but we knew who he was. And we didn't tell him that we were sort of in the early stages of trying to ski the 46s. We were just, we were, I think Doug and I, we were just kind of keeping it close to the chest. We didn't know if we were going to finish. We didn't know what we were going to find on some of these other peaks. For me, skiing these peaks for almost every single one was the first time that I had been up there. So I didn't really know what I was getting into. And we just didn't want to we just, as much as we probably would have liked to have asked Ron a lot of questions then, I think we just didn't want to have any added pressure of anyone really knowing what we're up to, because we just didn't know how long it was going to take. And so we didn't say anything to Ron that day, but he put us to work cutting that tree.
Yeah, it's great. It's great story. It's a fantastic story. I'm very similar to you. I'm a very much a work in silence type. I'm here to do what I'm going to do as I'm going to do it. And when I'm done, I'll tell you what I did. But I'm not going to make these big declarations during. I'm just going to go to work. So I can respect and relate to that tremendously. Now, talk to me about, here's what I want. I want your number one best day and the number one worst day you had during this journey. And which mountains were they and why?
I'll let Doug start. I'm just going to come back to Marcy. Best day, I think for sure. Worst day, man, there were. Okay, well,
were there just so many bad ones?
I'm going to tell. When Doug took a full year off of skiing when he was recovering from his knee surgery, so I was tiptoeing up to the Adirondacks on my own and starting to ski a couple of them solo. And I decided to do Algonquin and Iroquois one day on my own. Middle of the week, nobody was out. I had skied Algonquin a few times, so I was familiar with that, but it was my first time over to Iroquois. And winds pretty cold. Winds were really ripping up there. And in that saddle in between the two peaks, I could not find or follow the path that kind of goes through all of the sort of pine trees up there, and they were pretty snowed in. And halfway through that little pine forest there, I fell into a tree well upside down on my skis, and I was sort of almost completely vertical with my skis still attached, and they were sort of hanging me on the opening of the snow above me. And I was clipped in, and I could breathe, but I had fallen on top of my ski pole. I had lost one ski pole as I fell, and I was sort of mummified with my arms crossed across my body and the ski pole under my arms. And I could not free my arms or the ski pole. And I needed that ski pole to kind of punch up towards my binding and release myself. And I was stuck like that for about 4 or 5 minutes. And it was a real panicky kind of terror-filled 4 or 5 minutes. I could breathe, and that's a big danger with tree wells, especially if you're out west. A lot of people suffocate from those. So I could breathe. I knew I wasn't going to die of suffocation, but just that feeling of not really being able to move your body was pretty terrifying. I eventually did free the ski pole, knocked my binding loose, and then used that free foot to kick the other one off. And when I climbed out, I thought to myself, this is probably the last time I'm going to, ski these peaks alone, because it was an eye-opening moment for me about what could go wrong. And certainly that could happen if you were hiking as well. But I had the added I don't know what you call it. It's just, I had these skis attached to my feet, and that just added some complexity to my situation there. So, after that, Doug and I really kind of ended up skiing most of them together as a team, and and then figured out how to improve on even going out there together as a team. We at some point later on in our journey, we started carrying walkie-talkies, which maybe a lot of hikers don't necessarily need, but with skiing, there's a bigger opportunity for you to ski ahead and get separated from your partner. And it doesn't take much distance when you're skiing with someone in the winter, when you've got, when the trees are covered in snow, you can't hear sounds. You can't yell down to someone, or they can't hear you. So, so we started doing things like, carrying walkie-talkies to communicate with one another, which came in handy many, many times.
I bet, man. That was that. Literally, as you were telling that story, I had to like take deep breaths as you were talking about being upside down, like in a spruce trap.
Yeah, I don't like thinking about it.
I
It
bet.
was probably one of this. I think for me up there in the Adirondacks, it was one of the most, probably the scariest moment for me, and really like an eye-opening moment as far as what could happen up there, especially if you're alone. Just what happens up there if you're alone on a day when not many people were hiking and the winds were so strong that it was just erasing my ski tracks. And so I didn't really know if I thought I was on the sort of traditional route through. And I think that I was, because what I was doing is as I was moved forward, I would kind of stop my ski down, and I could feel, when you can kind of feel that there's a packed trail underneath the snow. But I had moved a foot forward and stomped down, and I thought I felt enough resistance there, and I thought I was still following what would probably be the hiker's trail. I just didn't know that it was a spruce trap. And then that's when I kind of put all my weight on that ski and punched through the snow and went into the hole. So,
that's wild. So let's take this moment. You guys, I think we would all call you experienced backcountry skiers. You'd already done the 35 at this point. You've been to the high peaks. You've been skiing. So like you knew what was happening out there, and even you found yourself in a place like that. So on this podcast, you'll hear me say very often that the mountains don't care about you, and the point of that is to, no matter what your experience level, no matter what you've done, they will reign supreme if they want. So that's why we have to be respectful. We have to be prepared. We have to know that like bad things can happen no matter what. And there's a prime example of someone like yourself, very experienced doing this, found themselves in, let's call it a life or death scenario in the mountains, because that's really what it was. So
Yeah. And I knew tree wells were a danger. That's why I was being careful in how I was placing my feet as I was skiing through there. And even knowing what the dangers were, it still happened to me.
Yeah. One wrong step. I mean, you could be the most seasoned person in the world. One wrong step and you roll an ankle, and it's the winter and you're by yourself and you're out there. You take one slip, you hit your head, you're by yourself. Like, man, things get real fast out in the mountains, especially in the wintertime. So just have to take this moment to highlight that. But yeah, like I said, I was like taking deep breaths as you were saying that. Well, wow, what a story that is. So I could talk to you guys about this for hours, just the skiing portion, but I got to get into the film as well. So at what point, so this was a 10-year long journey. A lot of life happened over this 10 years, and a lot of life happens over anyone during the course of a decade. Talk to us a little bit about that journey, like from start to finish, what went through, and then also talk to us about when did the film kind of come into your radar?
Yeah. So the film really came onto our radar, or I should say, I decided to think about making a film about the Adirondack skiing last winter. So, 9 of the 10 years that Doug and I were doing this, making a film about it was not on the table at all. It wasn't something we talked about. It wasn't something that we were planning for. Doug and I had been, we had been recording things on phones and GoPros along the previous 9 years, just for our own record. In the back of my mind, I thought maybe if we finish this, I'll combine and make like a 3-minute little highlight reel. But that was really all and share it with friends and family. But the sort of formal idea I committed to last winter, and I guess the genesis of my filmmaking career, and I'm putting career in air quotes because my career is in its infancy. But I didn't own a camera, or even, wasn't even thinking about making documentary films until 2022. So a little, coming up on 3 years. But I lost my wife at the very end of 2021. I lost my wife to stage 4 cancer, and I had spent 2 years as her caregiver and taking care of her. And right after I lost her, I, as one does, you think about you know, what you want to do, or what you should do, or what will keep your mind occupied, or just give you some sort of sense of purpose moving forward. And I thought about trying to make documentary films. And so a month after she passed, I bought a camera with the intention of making some short films. And over the next 2 years, I made 3 very short films, about between 3 and 5 minutes long each. And as we kind of got into last winter up in the Adirondacks, I started thinking about formally making a film about our journey. And so, I told Doug at some point during last winter that I was going to record more, and I wanted him to record things on his phone more, and that I would, bring a camera and be a little bit more conscious about documenting what we were doing. But even once we finished skiing them all, I sat around for 2 months and I still wasn't sure if I wanted to commit to making the film. Because, at that point, we had 10 years of footage that we had been saving on our own, and it seemed a little bit daunting. But then also, how do you tell the story and what's going to make it more interesting to everyone that's going to watch a film? Because I just don't want to put together a film that just had edits of us just skiing down these peaks that, that might be interesting to some people, but not to everyone. So I thought a little bit more about what would make a film interesting to me, but to others as well. And I started reaching out to some folks that are connected to the Adirondacks in different ways, either through skiing or hiking or through journalism, and spent June and July traveling around interviewing those folks. And once I had met with them and had their points of view on the Adirondacks or skiing up here, then I really committed to making a film, and sat down at the tail end of the summer and started that editing process.
Right. So this filmmaking career, as you said, was, stemmed from your wife's passing, and it became probably, I would have to imagine, part of your healing process too, because this is what you started to throw your time into. Now, this film that you just put out, Variable, what can we expect to see in this film? So you have other people talking about skiing. Is this all about your journey? Is it about skiing in the Adirondacks? Give us a little more rundown now about what people could expect to see in that.
If you want to see my worst day in the mountains, go see Variable.
Yeah. We try. I think we tried to highlight some of our best days in the mountains and our worst days. But the film, from start to finish, the focus of the film is on the Adirondack 46s. We touch on our time in the Catskills in the film. But the film also, there are 6 other people included in the film. Of course, it wouldn't be a film about skiing the Adirondack 46s without Ron Konowitz. So Ron is in the film talking and shares a lot of great imagery from his early days skiing in the Adirondacks. And not only skiing, but, Ron has a long history of being involved with search and rescue up there. He's just, if anyone knows every corner of the Adirondacks, and when I say every corner, I'm talking about every stream bed, every drainage, every, potential gladed area. I mean, Ron just knows every inch of what could be skiable terrain up there. So he's a real treasure chest. So Ron is in the film. Lori Rankin, who's most recently was the president of the Adirondack 46ers, and is also a Catskill resident down here. Just a wealth of knowledge about the mountains. David Goodman, who's written a lot about Adirondack backcountry skiing and wrote the book Best Backcountry Skiing in the Northeast, which has been republished many times. David's in the film. Caitlin Kelly, Adirondack local, also part of the Adirondack Avalanche group that is educating folks on the dangers of skiing the Adirondacks and also bringing avalanche awareness. and Charlie Wise from the Mountaineer. Everyone knows the Mountaineer. They need no explanation. And then lastly, Andrew Weibrecht, Lake Placid local, 2-time Olympic medalist, and also someone that had been attempting to ski the 46s around the same time that Doug and I did. So Andrew offers some of his perspective too, which is great to hear. You know, an Olympic athlete who was out there skiing and backcountry skiing the Adirondack 46s, and someone who grew up here that really has a deep appreciation for what's out there, loves these mountains, but also I think he would be the first to admit the challenges that come with skiing them.
Yeah, no, that's great to have him in the film. 2-time Olympic medalist, to have him in the film talking about skiing, like the difference between now like Olympic skier and now backcountry skiing the high peaks. That's an awesome perspective to have in the film. Very cool. Very cool. Now, how did you get all these people in the film? Did you just reach out to them and say, hey, we're doing this film about this thing that we were doing?
Yeah, I just reached out. I had no connection to Andrew, or, didn't really know Charlie, or definitely didn't know David Goodman. Yeah, they were all gracious. I didn't have to hard sell them on being in the film. I think, everyone in the film has a deep love and appreciation, have, everyone spent a lot of time in the mountains. So, everyone was very generous in giving their time and perspective.
That's great, because I know the ski community here in the ADK is pretty tight-lipped. You guys are a tight-lipped bunch when people talk about skiing.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. And, I think for Doug and I mean, we might consider ourselves part of the ski community now, but just more recently, as what we've done has become more public, and just through that, we've also just gotten to connect with people up there. But when we were doing it, we didn't know anyone up here. We didn't really have any friends that were local. It's really hard to get information about ski conditions or ski routes. And so, we were really just doing this on our own, and not, Doug had hiked more than I had up there. So, but, a lot of these mountains, we were just going in blind. And Doug's driving 5 hours from Rochester. I'm driving, depending on where I was at the time, either from New York City or from Woodstock, 3 to 5 hours. We're both working. We don't really get to pick and choose when we're going to be up there. So we would just drive up there and sort of pray that there would be snow on the ground at the trailhead, and that the conditions wouldn't be, abysmal when we got up to the summits. So yeah, it was a lot of just throwing darts blindly and hoping that we would, make the trip up there and that it would be skiable.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Doug, you had mentioned see the film to see your worst day. I can't let this episode go without hearing that story quickly. What was your worst day in the high peaks? You brought it up, so we got to hear it.
I mean, I got to leave it. I got to let the film tell that story.
Tell us what mountain range it was on, at least.
I will say it's on the couple mountains, or one mountain in particular that most people would say it's their least favorite mountain to hike.
Got it.
So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Could go any way. Could go any way.
Yeah,
but
it could.
Yeah, I get it. Probably Cooksacraga, maybe Blake, maybe Cliff. One of those
are good. Those are
good choices.
Those are all good.
You had a green light in one of those for sure.
Yeah. Now I do have a question, actually, because there's a couple stretches in the high peaks where I'm like, man, how do you get down this on skis? Like there's like getting down Cliff, there's Allen Mountain, there's going down the ladder from between Armstrong and Upper Wolfjaw. Like there's some sections that are just, as I think in my head, like, man, how do you get down that on skis? Were there any sections where you looked at this and just thought, crap, what are we going to do? I'd have to imagine there had to be some moments of that.
I don't know if there was like, oh crap moments. Sometimes, even between Blake and Colvin, when you have enough snow, I mean, yes, some of those ladders have ice, but sometimes they get filled with snow and you're able to kind of just side slip down on your skis.
Okay, sure.
And, it's the same. I recently re-hiked the Devil's Path here in the Catskills this past fall with a friend. I hadn't been up to some of those peaks since I skied them 10 years ago, and hiking them in the summer without feet and feet of snow. I looked at some of these things. I was like, how did I ski this? I can't believe that I skied this. But, when you have enough snow, it really fills in the gaps on a lot of those things. Certainly, I think, on some of, I think it was the ladder going up to Armstrong. That's a vertical ladder. Did we take our skis off and climb down three rungs and put our skis back on? Yes, of course. Like it just, there was no like real way to kind of navigate around that.
And so you can you'll see that in the movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
But I don't, coming down Cable Route or any of those things might be icy but yeah, we usually can find a way down things. So yeah, when you have that much snow up there, it really fills in the gaps a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
So big picture, 30,000 feet up, looking down on you 10 years later from when you started. Life changes, you grow, life looks different 10 years later. Bigger picture, what did you hope to accomplish by skiing the 46? And then what did you hope to accomplish by telling the story in the film?
I think for me, it was just, for me, as far as accomplishment, I think it was just can I do it? And I know I learned, certainly in that Treewell incident that I described earlier, but I just, as we skied and did more of the 46s and, we did some of the easier ones to start and kind of progressed to the harder ones, I realized for myself that I wouldn't have continued on if I didn't have a partner, a ski partner to do it with, someone that was close to my ability and willing to put in the time and the effort. You get out there, and when you're ski touring and things are taking longer, the effort just feels, to me, it feels harder than if you were hiking them. I think if I was trying to do it solo, I think I mentally would have given up at some point. So, to have Doug there was a real boon. And I think for me, it was just, at some point, it was like, well, can I do this? Can I finish it? And so, yeah, it's just, you do it for that sense of accomplishment. And then to answer your second question with the movie, I went back and forth. Whether I wanted to make the movie, whether it was, part of me just felt, I'm not, it felt a little bit gratuitous, I guess. I didn't want the movie to come off as bragging about something, or just is this worth showing? Are people going to be interested? But the more I thought about it, and over all these years of doing this and explaining to friends over and over what it is I'm trying to do in the mountains, what is this backcountry skiing? What is this backcountry skiing in the Catskills and the Adirondacks? They would ask me questions, and I would always try to paint a picture, but I could tell that they didn't quite really understand what it was or what the experience was like. And so I think part of me just wanted to share that, just so I didn't have to explain myself anymore. But the more I thought about it, and the more that I realized, Ron Konowitz did this almost 30 years ago, and no one had really done it in its entirety since. I understood the weight of what we had done, and I certainly was proud of it. So yeah, I think for me, it took a little bit of convincing myself that it was a worthy story to tell, and that I guess that I was worthy to tell it. And as a new filmmaker, someone that had never really made a film longer than 4 minutes before, gave me a lot of self-doubt, just as far as, because this is a film that obviously Doug and I filmed and recorded everything, but then I sat down and edited it and did the sound design and did the color grading and spent my fall trying to convince people to show the film, and I'm submitting it to film festivals now. So I'm really a one-man band, and it's an incredible amount of work to make a film and then try to get it out there in the world, and to make a film that has 10 or 12 years of your life in it. And how do you tell that story? And then just going through the archives of material. And it didn't want this to be just another quote unquote ski film. I wanted it to be about our journey, a little bit about my life. And I wanted it to be about the Adirondacks and why people think the Adirondacks is such a special place, why the Adirondacks is such a challenging place to be in or to hike in or ski in, and just to tell a little bit of the history of skiing in the Adirondacks. So yeah, I tried to bring a lot of these things into the movie. And I hope that it comes through when you watch it.
An undertaking as big as the skiing itself, right? When you started to take those films?
Yeah, I think it really felt consuming. And I told my partner, Allison, that when I finished making this film, editing it and got it out there into the world late this fall, I said to make sure that I don't try to do something like this for at least another year, because it just felt totally draining. And just like finishing the Adirondack 46ers, I'm very proud that this is done out there and that people have been responding so positively to it as it's been screening. But it was a lot of work. And I also didn't know, as I dove into making this film, if I was going to be able to pull it all together and to make something that felt like worthy to put out there. And I also wanted to do justice to everyone that, agreed to be part of the film and talk to me about it. So, it felt like a lot of work, and it felt, almost as hard or harder than actually doing the 46s.
Sure. I can absolutely relate. When I put out my first season of this podcast, writing every hike, recording, editing, the whole process took longer than it took me to actually hike the mountains.
Yeah.
And more hours went into that than it went into actually like climbing the 46 high peaks.
Yeah. It takes an incredible amount of work to plan and edit. And this film is just under 30 minutes. I'm trying to condense 10 to 12 years of our lives into it. 46 mountains of the Adirondacks, plus a few more of the Catskills. So trying to condense all of that down into, 28, 30-minute film and tell a story and be cohesive and really just touch on all these things that I wanted to cover. Because again, it's not just about what Doug and I skied. There's a bigger story there. So it was a real challenge.
Yeah. Well, I commend you, nothing but respect, anyone that embarks on the adventure you guys went on, but also wanting to tell the story and share the story and doing the work required to do that. Most people will never understand the type of undertaking that is. So nothing but respect. And I commend you for what you did. Now, Doug, tell me a little bit about what was your kind of big picture. Why did you go on this adventure?
I wanted to become a better backcountry skier, I guess. That's one. Wanted to become an ADK 46er. That's probably two. And just spending time with my brother in the mountains. I think we both enjoy it. And otherwise, I might not see my brother all that often. So this was just a good adventure and a good journey to undertake with him. And so
great.
A lot of different reasons.
Sure. So now what is, over this 10-year journey, this epic adventure you guys went on, what is your biggest takeaway? Or what was the biggest thing you learned about yourselves? And I'm going to ask you both. What is the biggest thing you learned about yourselves during this 10-year journey?
I think for me, it just, I think I learned that you really learn what you're capable of. And I think you have an idea in your mind of maybe physically or mentally what you're capable of. But when push comes to shove, or when you're in certain situations, or when you think you're totally physically depleted and drained, when you're just cold and miserable, if you really want to do the thing, you realize how much more that you can push through, and when you really need to. So I think just learning like what your upper limits are when when you think the dial only goes to 10 and you learn that it can go to 11 or 12 is yeah, it's eye-opening and it's satisfying. Yeah, you spend a lot of time doing something like this, and I think like most people that do the 46ers, you end up growing in certain ways that maybe you didn't really expect when you started. You think the journey or hiking these mountains is going to lead you to one sense of accomplishment, and then you figure out that you are proud or satisfied, or just feel accomplished in ways that you weren't really expecting. So,
yep, I call it a 46er journey because you come out the other side a different version of yourself. You come out a different human being. We think that it's like this adventure to go climb some mountains, right? Take some pictures, share some images, have these cool views, when in reality, you're going on a journey of transformation at the hands of the Adirondack High Peaks, of the mountains, because you will not come out the same person you were when you started.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Doug, how about yourself, brother? What was your biggest takeaway for yourself?
Pretty much along the same lines as Jamie. I think, if I set my mind to something, if I really want to accomplish something like skiing the 46ers or the Catskill 35s, I'm going to try to make it happen as much as I can. I know both of us, we weren't sure if we would actually be able to ski the Adirondack 46ers. So it wasn't until pretty much the last summit on Mount Colden that we, realized that goal. But we didn't know until that day that we were actually going to do it. So, but yeah, just if you set your mind to it, you'll accomplish it.
It's an amazing perspective that you just said, that you didn't know if you would accomplish the goal until you got to the very last mountain. Man, there are some life lessons in that concept and in what you just shared. Absolutely amazing. Well, guys, it's an amazing story. I could talk to you for hours about this because I have so many more questions. But before I wrap things up here on the Summit Sessions, I'd like to ask the guests 3 different questions to finish this episode out. The first question we'll have you both answer. What's one unique thing that's in your backpack that you always want to have, that you always got to have with you when you go out into the high peaks or you go out hiking, skiing, whatever? Something unique to you.
Well, there's a few, and I'm sure Doug can rattle a whole bunch off, but I'll say one thing that we started carrying last winter. We started carrying small snowshoes that we could attach to the bottoms of our ski boots.
Mm.
And that was an insurance policy for us. If we have a ski failure, we break a ski or a binding and we're, 5, 8, 10 miles out there, there is nothing worse than the thought of trying to get back to your car with one working ski and one ski boot punching through the snow. So that is something new that we adopted to our kit last winter. We luckily did not have to use them, but it's something that we carry now for adventures like that.
Dude, great choice, great option. I've had not that type of pleasure walking back with a ski and a boot, but I've had a broken bootlace multiple times in the high peaks, and then thinking to myself, if I just spent the 14 cents to have an extra shoelace in my backpack, this trip back would not be the most miserable experience of my life. So, man, those little things you don't think about until you need them, right? But very good call there. How about you, Doug? Something unique for you?
For me, the game changer was the 40 below bottle boot that holds a Nalgene bottle right on my hip, the hip belt of my backpack. That was a game changer because I drink a lot of water, whereas Jamie doesn't typically drink as much water as I do. So I want to get a sip of water whenever I feel thirsty. So being able to keep the water from freezing and being able to have access to it quickly, it was really a game changer. After we learned a lot of lessons after my worst day on the mountain, but that was one of them for sure.
Mm-hmm. I am notorious for not drinking enough in the winter, not eating enough, getting dehydrated, because it's a chore to eat. It's a chore to drink, especially when you're out in the cold. And I'm always telling myself and the people on the podcast, you got to drink, you got to eat, because just like you said, it not having that access or having that easy, simple access helps to relieve that need.
Doug goes through sometime and he carries 3 to 4 gallons of water with him. He needs water. I mean, and I think I always forget every winter how much water I need. And even I carry between 2 and 3 liters, I should say. I misspoke, gallons, but liters of water. Yeah. But we carry a lot of water out there.
In the summer, I'm a 6 liter type of guy. And I'm still scooping. I don't know. I get nervous, right? Like I bring all this water out there with me.
Yeah.
All right. So next question, in both of your opinions, what makes the Adirondacks a unique place?
I mean, we touch on it in the film. David Goodman does, but just, the forever wild, aspect of it. I mean, the legal forever wild and, coming from a skier perspective, just the fact that you can't cut these larger, wider ski trails or paths make it really challenging. And so there's that, which again, I think is why we all appreciate the Adirondacks too. And just the size of the park, it's huge. It's a massive park. And when you have a 22 mile round trip day on skis, that's a long day, especially with all the stuff that you go through with ski touring and transitioning and just the extra equipment and weight, to, as Doug mentioned, if you have 8 or 10 or 12 extra pounds just on your feet, let alone, Doug and I carry a lot of stuff in our pack, extra stuff. We're just all about redundancy. So we've got probably more weight in our packs than the typical hiker does as well. So to have all of that weight on your body for those long days, we're used to it, you can handle it, but it's a lot, and it makes the Adirondacks unique in that respect as well.
Sure. How heavy are we talking? Just out of curiosity, what was your typical pack like?
I think typical, it depends how much water you bring, but probably between 18 and maybe 28 pounds, I'm guessing.
Got it.
Yeah. But I know a lot of people just carry, one extra dry set of things, but we're carrying sometimes 2 to 3 sets of things, as far as gloves or base layers. We're bringing a camp stove. We're bringing a collapsible ski pole in case we break a pole, which we've done many times. Some of them we're bringing avalanche shovel. Sometimes we're bringing the avalanche gear, beacon shovel probe, if we're going to ski a slide. Sometimes we're bringing just one mountaineering or ice axe in case you need to get to water. Maybe we've run out of water and we need to just punch through some stream ice to dip our Nalgene in. We've carried bivy sacks. We carry camp meals in case we get delayed or stuck out there and we need to actually cook another meal. We're all about redundancy and carrying. We're both okay with carrying extra weight. We'd rather have more things with us and carry that extra weight out there. It just gives us peace of mind. And man, there's nothing like changing into dry clothes as you're coming off the summit. And sometimes when we get down off the summit and we get back to the flat section and we have to ski out, 5 or 8 miles, we'll do another base layer change and put on a third set of clothes. So it's just those little things. It's, more room in your pack or it's more weight, but it really changes it puts a smile back on your face. It gives you hope as far as getting out and you're just not like miserably trudging back to the car. So it makes it a little bit less miserable.
Makes that sting just a little less when you realize you still are 7 miles from your car. Even though all the mountains are done for the day, and mentally you've kind of like checked out. Oh, the mountains are done. I finished the day. When really, no, you haven't. You're not back yet.
And that was, and I'll say, I think everybody learns this as you go through hiking your whatever range of mountains you're hiking. That wasn't what our packs looked like when we first skied Lower Wolf Jaw back in 2015. Doug's really good with on the gear side of things and researching and knowing what the latest things are. But certainly that was a learning additive process over these 10 years of like, what works, what can we improve upon? Are there things that one of us can carry that the other person doesn't need to carry because it's too, we don't need two of them. But yeah, certainly a learning process where we're much more dialed in with our gear now than we were when we first started.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to reading the book that you write one day.
Yeah. Doug will have a lot of good chapters in there for sure.
Great. Doug, anything you want to add to what makes the Adirondacks a unique place from your perspective?
I just think it's a magical place. Driving up, say from New York City to Keene Valley to Lake Placid. There's nothing like it. And it's right here in New York. I think it's pretty special for everybody to be able to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, my final question, why do you guys ski? Why do you explore the mountains? Why do you put yourselves in these things that they're hard, right? Like climbing mountains. No one's making you do it. Skiing mountains, no one's making you go do this hard thing, but yet you're doing it. You're drawn to the mountains to have these adventures. So what is the reason that you keep coming back for more?
I think just as far as being a backcountry skier, there's just this allure of what it's like, or that feeling that you remember when you have a really amazing backcountry ski day. If you're out there, let's say if you're in the Adirondacks and you're on one of the slides and you're the only one out there, you're out there with your ski partner and you get perfect conditions. It's just, on a powder day anywhere, Whiteface out west, down here in the Catskill Mountains at Hunter, on a powder day, and it's just hundreds / thousands of people that show up, and you're just it's fighting all these skiers. And are you really going to get first tracks, or by the time you take your second run, is there going to be any lines of untouched powder left? Like, maybe not. And so I think there's just that allure of getting out there and finding amazing conditions. That wasn't why we were skiing the 46s, but we had a couple amazing days out there that were really special, that we just got super lucky and got these amazing conditions out there. And I think for anyone that hikes in the Catskills or the Adirondacks, if you're a backcountry skier, and as more people ski the Catskills down here, I've talked to them, and we all go out into the woods and we're constantly looking at the trees and the terrain and imagining, is that skiable? And it's just this really fun game to play. And, when there's the natural landslides happen, and certainly after when Irene came through and after big storms, all the skiers are thinking, oh, is there some new terrain that just opened up? So, I think there's just this allure and mystery. And certainly here on the East Coast or on the Adirondacks or Catskills, the skiable terrain is challenging to find, but it exists out there, and it's kind of this fun, magical game to play, that maybe there's this hidden gem out there that you're going to come across one day, and you might keep it a secret for a long time, or you might share it with friends, which is also a really great thing to do. So, yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Doug? What keeps you going out for more, putting yourself in these hard positions, these hard adventures, but yet you keep going, yet you finished what you started? What keeps you going back for more?
As hard as it is out there, it's a challenge, and it's fun to be out there and enjoy the Adirondack Mountains and the snow, the cold. It's painful. There's a lot of suffering. But at the end of the day, you get back to the car and you had a great day. And I think that's why we keep coming back. We want that great day.
I love it. I think we can all relate to that sentiment. So very great. Where can we find you guys online, and where can we find the film?
I'm easiest to find online on Instagram at Catskill Tracks. And the film We can learn more about the film and all of the upcoming dates and the trailer at variablemovie.com.
All right, great. Well, that's going to wrap us up here on the Summit Sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Check out the film Variable, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing this adventure as much as I did. Go grab your skis, head into the backcountry. Just kidding, do it if you're ready. But there's lots of people around here that are helping people get into this sport because it is growing pretty tremendously here in the Adirondack Park. But check out 46outdoors.com for everything I have to offer to help you guys have a successful Adirondack mountain adventure. Check back on Fridays for new mountains, new stories, new guests, and new episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast.